And it was this head was found by Arlie Caudle, and Jim Burchell is doing the research on it. It was found down in Kentucky. And I got involved with him because this is exactly the same sort of research I do. On all the videos on mud fossils, please leave a comment. We certainly would appreciate it. Thank you. All right, before I go into the head, I just want to be sure you understand about the carbon and the iron. You see how it's like a reddish, deep reddish and black in here? That's the product of iron or carbon. Is what the only thing we can surmise, and it's totally expected where there's broken bones. The marrow in the bones contains what's called ferritin, and that's extremely heavy with iron. And also, blood contains 70% of the iron in your body. So between the two of them, I think you just got all of it. Well, no, I'm just kidding. But, you know, there's a lot of blood. Where the blood is and where this bone marrow is, you're going to find black. And that is totally accepted and expected, and that's why we expect to see what we think. Now, here's another. This also is black, and I believe, and you see here, this is that fascia. If you've seen the paper and the videos on fascia fossilization, you see these flat surfaces? That was just like that. I didn't cut those. This is what's called ultramafic rock, and deep in the, and it just happens. They lay flat and they squish, and when they do, eventually they force these hydrocarbons out, and the organics sublimate out, and you end up with carbon and metals. This is the head scan, and I'm going to penetrate into the head. Now we're going down from the top. There's no fractures. Nothing is broken yet. When we get inside the head, we're going to start to find some cracks. Now we're inside the head, and we're going inside, and all of a sudden, here's our fractures are showing up. Now, that's appears to me is a bony fracture, another bony fracture, and the one that radiates down to his forehead. All right, this is the facial right from the front, obviously, and you can see it appears that something very large hit him straight in the head, and that created that radiating fracture. Now, we cannot come up with any other explanation other than Fe2 plus, Fe3 plus carbon. If somebody and it's totally expected. It's not like they call them ferrins. Ferrin, like ferrous, iron, is in your bones. When a bone breaks, it contains ferrins, and it's heavy with iron, and that comes out. And now there's two different types of iron, the Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus, and they're looking to make attachments to this thing. One turns brown and one turns black. And the other thing that, and so this is totally fully expected, that blood contains 70% of the iron in your body, and that iron is rust. It turns into rust when it gets into the oxygen and water. Now, there's another reason possible. Could be bone char. Bone char is a totally understood process where you char the organic materials out of the bones, and you're left with carbonaceous, absorptive material, and they use it just like activated charcoal, same sort of stuff. And the carbon does not vaporize off or sublimate until 8,000 degrees, the highest temperature of any element. And all the organic stuff that isn't black or whatever, it sublimates off under 2,000 degrees, so you end up with carbon if this was a process of heat. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be heat. We just need these things tested, and we don't have the resources to do it, and we're requesting for some help. That's what we need. And we're just hoping we can get some. Now, I mentioned before that the texture of the head, you see this line here? This is totally speculation. Everything I'm saying is speculation because I don't have any tests. But this right here appears to be almost just like you would expect a knitted cap band. There's a slot that can go right up between this and the side of his head. You could put a playing card up in here. So there is a separation of some sort. If you look very carefully over here, you can see there's some little dimply looking things that almost look like, you know, the depressions of knitting, or possible, it's like a chainmail, or maybe his hair is sculpted this way. I have no clue. And this is, again, all speculation. We need to test it. This is some skull anatomy, and notice the nasal bone here, and this exact shape of the architecture. Down here is the cartilage and so forth. Now, also notice these little holes here and there. Those, I believe they call them formia, or I believe that's the name of them. But anyway, that's where blood vessels and nerves enter into the bones. And there's a bunch of these little tags around here. So anyway, that's the anatomy. You can go back and forth and look at that. All right, this is a close-up of the face. And notice that nasal bone, the exact shape of it, and how this is pushed off. And nobody would carve these kind of things. And this, I believe, is one of those little dimple-ish formulas there. Now the rays, there's a shadow driven obviously across here. We planed it across so we could see some things. You notice that's the difference between the different molecules and chemicals create layers that just change, so that the iris and so forth is going to change differently and nucleophilically react differently than the substances around it. But the skin, I believe, and again, this needs to be tested, and it is being tested right now, is electrically, ionically displaced. And chemicals, other minerals and elements have attached themselves to the organic material and become literally electrically fossilized. And the material that's on this is similar to quartz and feldspar, I believe. And this needs to be tested, but this is what I believe. And I have these things to be looked at. All right, this is a close-up of that big crack in his head. And this black, you see the black up here, and this very dark brownish black, and the red all over here. And look closely at the texture. Something that, you know, I suspect the guy has a cap on. That's what I have other things I can show you. And that has some kind of a texture to it. Now, don't forget, this would have been very, very compressed under, you know, really compressive forces. So everything here is literally compacted like in a vacuum bag, that type of effect. Again, the black, Fe2, Fe3, carbon, and if somebody else has an explanation, I'd love to hear it. We just don't know. And we can't get it tested. We just don't have the resources to do that, so we need somebody to help us. This, we expect, is the same thing. It's one or the other. Fe3, I think it is, Fe3 plus. And it turns into rust. This turns black. It's just the way they decompose. And we just can't seem to come up with any other solution. All right, this is obviously shooting from the top of the head down. And here's his eyebrows. That's the brow ridge of the bone ridge. Now, if you come above that about 1/2 inch on your own head and compress the flesh just above, about 1/2 inch above the brow bone, you'll feel you have this same architecture on your same head. It depresses right in there. And again, this is compressed, so the soft tissue, which this has preserved electrically, is now depressed into these cavities. That's why these show up. And those other little, I call them dimples, they're little, I think they're called formias. Anyway, they show up as well. Nobody would carve these things. This is the bottom end of that head, and this appears to take on some similarity to the vertebra or the atlas of the neck, something along that lines. But if you look at it carefully, you can see the outline, and you can see they look like the bones, I mean, or whatever. It's hard to tell, but there's some form of a structure there, and this area here appears to have bled. And I believe in, and, you know, again, this is all speculation. I have no proof of this. I need these things tested to be able to prove this. But I believe this exact spot is where the blood goes up into the head, and this other side is where the nerves run. This is what I've been told, and looking at it, you can see there's some obvious pattern there that sure looks like something that is anatomical. These are the things we need to have tested. All right, here's the facial shot, and again, remember those little dimples, those formias or whatever they call them? It's very clear that it's there. It's an impression. And there's also one over here, which is on the side of the nose where the blood vessels go in, and it's bleeding. I believe that's what it is. Again, I need these things tested. We're just speculating, but what we're seeing, just, you know, just hard to discount.